So we're talking about putting together still lifes. And I wanted to talk a little bit about composition, how compositions kind of work. We talked a little bit about setting up our panels, and I'll go over that because there's a few of you that are brand new. This here is a model stand. And when you're setting up for a still life, pretty much most of the people who are setting up for still life for classes in their studio, the problem is they don't have the equipment. And it's when I teach the Power to Create class, one of the things that the students walk away from is that they have to get their studio set up. And if you're having a problem doing the homework assignment, it might be a good idea that you might think about doing some house cleaning and getting your studio so that you can set up powerfully. When you're all of a sudden deciding, oh, I'm going to do some work at home, and you look at the big job of getting everything out, you talk yourself out of doing it. So, first thing, what you want to do is you want to get something like this. Now, this is a sculpting stand, and I like this because you can raise it, it's on wheels, and you can move it around. And I do have the information for the stuff that I'm showing you available on my website, stefanbaumann.com. Some of the people who have watched the YouTube videos say, oh, I'm just trying to sell something. And I'm not. It goes, when you go there, you'll see a button that says, they're not even buttons, it says, here, call this phone number. And it's, I don't get any kickback out of it. You don't need all this stuff. Yeah, you could set up a bunch of books on a table and put a cardboard box up and then kind of guess where you want to do your lighting, but it's not very powerful. These model stands are expensive. And so if this is kind of out of your budget, music stands work well too. So you can get the old music stands, you can buy them on eBay, and they have that angled thing that you have. Well, if you just flatten it and tighten it, it works as a tall table. And you can move it up and down like this too. So a music stand works really well with that. Then I have this box. Now you could use just a cardboard box, but this is just really cool because it's instantly becomes something that you could actually produce in a painting. And depending on which direction you're going to have your still life, if you're going to have the light coming from this way, you can keep this open, or you can turn it this way and have the light that comes in through this way. I prefer actually doing it this way, and we'll get into that in a sec. So you have this. If you go to my website, and she's the one who built this one, and she does a really good job. There's a phone number. She's an ex-cabinet maker. And you can go ahead and order directly from her. There's another phone number that I'm going to try to see if I can, somebody who's actually done this. So it's really handy to have, and what's really nice is that you can put this away. We're going to talk a little bit about actually setting up a still life in here. So I've picked up a few things that we can use to kind of decorate this, and I want to kind of talk about how to go about setting up your lighting, because there's always a lot of questions about how do I go about doing that. So one of the things I recommend doing is getting some fabric. Where's that fabric I have here? Okay. Getting some fabric, or if you have anybody that that works at a design firm that has wallpaper patterns and stuff, it's good to get one of their old wallpaper books with all of the different colors and patterns and stuff. It's nice to have something that has a little bit of a pattern to it. Now, yeah.
There's a group called FABMO, F-A-B-M-O, in this area that has all that kind of stuff.
FABMO?
FABMO. Once a month they have a free giveaway of fabric and designer upholstery fabrics and wallpaper.
See, that would be awesome. That's in the Bay Area. Okay, FABMO. So it's kind of nice to have access to that. It's kind of nice to have like a wallpaper book if you can, or lots of fabric, on hand. It's fun to go to thrift shops because oftentimes you can find interesting fabrics that there's only a piece of and you don't have to like spend a fortune. It's good to kind of collect stuff because like the homework assignment this week was a teacup. A lot of you didn't have teacups, so you had to figure out how to get one. And you know, thrift shops have a lot of this stuff. And a lot of thrift shops have a lot of awesome things for $1 or $2. And they're usually things that have a little bit more interest in them, a little bit more pattern in them that make for an interesting painting as opposed to just what you have on hand at home. But what you have at home is fine too. We're going to talk a little bit about the placement, eye magnets, and how to go about thinking about a still life. One of the things that's really important about setting up a still life is understanding how we look at things in Western culture. We look at things from left to right. When we read a book, we read it from left to right. So oftentimes, when you're setting up a composition, you might want to consider that. If we turn the composition around to this way, and we go from right to left, it's a little bit more awkward. It's okay, but it's a little bit more awkward. When you are selling products, when you want to be dominant, when you want to show that you control something, you always want to be on the right side of anything. So for instance, Jay Leno, when he had his show, he would set up his desk on the left side and his band was on the right. And if you remember how the guy that was playing the guitar in the band, he almost ruled the show. Almost anything he said would overpower Jay because he was on the right side of the stage. David Letterman is on the right side of the stage, and no matter what the musician does, he never overpowers. Okay, so having your central focal point on the right subconsciously is better than on the left. When you open up a newspaper, all the advertising you'll find is on the right, and that advertising on that side is more expensive than the ads on the left. When you read a magazine, oftentimes you read backwards and you look down on the right side. Can you see how having something on the right side becomes more dominant? And this is old advertising subconscious way. This is what, if you studied advertising in the 1920s and 30s, you'll always see that the Lucky Strikes were on the right and the other cigarettes were on the left. Always have your product that you want to sell on the right. And today, after you leave today, you will notice that a lot of new ad people, a lot of people that are doing billboards and things haven't learned that. And you'll see that they'll sell Bounty as their thing, and they'll put Bounty here and then their competitor over on the other side, and they're actually shooting themselves in the foot. So it is better to have a picture if you're going to have the main subject matter on the right-hand side. Now we're going to talk a little bit about eye magnets and how you take a viewer from the left-hand side into the painting, actually draw them into the painting, and then try to bring them back out and try to create a circular composition. And we'll kind of play around with that. Since this is a real short demo, we probably won't go into it a lot, but just so you have kind of a clue. So after you kind of set up your thing, we'll do something like this. And we'll put in our central focal point, which will be our subject here. And I picked up a few other things here. We got a little Japanese toad, and we've got kind of this. Now throughout the years, I've been always kind of against using silk flowers. But you know, they make silk flowers so well. And I have found, you know, because I oftentimes will paint with real dogwood when they're in bloom, or roses. They're so uncooperative. You know, it's like They're beautiful when you get set up, and then they just kind of wilt after an hour. And it's really frustrating. So I have actually gotten to the point where I think it's kind of cool to have something that kind of stays alive. And with eye magnets, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for a way, since our main subject matter is on the right, that we have something that comes in to the painting from the left-hand side, just like we read from left to right, and then cause something to happen. And this is going to be just really brief here. And this is why the silk roses are great, because you can kind of bend them around. And you're going to try to create energy that comes in on one end. And like I said, this is just an example, an overzealous example, but where you have energy coming from the left-hand side that's open, comes onto the right-hand side, and points inwards again. Okay, so we're creating a vortex. So you would have something that would actually come in, easy, and then cause the viewer to go around. Now, when I'm working on my paintings, I work with the golden mean. And so I'll have a box here. And then I'll have my main subject matter somewhere here, which would be on the mean. Okay? So we'd have the golden mean, my main central focal point. And if you look at my golden mean video on YouTube, you'll find some of these other measurements where you have a measurement here, a measurement here, a measurement here, a measurement going across this way, this way, this way. You'll have all of these points. And all of how to get all those points are on that video. So if you haven't, this kind of confuses you right now, you've got to look at that video. And what I actually do is have this side of my painting look relatively open. Allow the light to come in and hit here. But I will purposely, even on the landscape, I will purposely have things that point the viewer like this and create a vortex. And I will spend some time on that. And something like this, I will end up putting a flower on a golden mean, a flower on a golden mean, a flower on a golden mean. I would actually take the stem, go across here, because this is the way the viewer will come into the painting. And then I will spend a lot of time developing something that causes the painting to go like this. Now, why do I do that? The reason why I do that is a painting that has movement is much more interesting than paintings that don't. And this was the way that artists were thinking during the Baroque era. Because remember, in the Baroque era, everything looked flat. I mean, prior to that, the Renaissance. So you had subjects that pretty much sat on the table, kind of flat. And that's how a lot of still lifes are. But then the Baroque artists like Caravaggio and some of the more, flamboyant artists said, we need to get the viewer to participate a little bit more. So we're going to be putting eye magnets in to help the viewer kind of subconsciously be whipped around. Now, it wasn't just in painting that they had these. They had these in architecture and in almost anything that, the carvings. If you look at some of Bernini's sculptures, you'll see Bernini will twist the model in air to the point that it almost feels like it's coming off the floor. When you walk into old European churches, you're not aware that this is what happens. You walk into an old European church, and I've watched this happen when you go into the old cathedrals, and you come in, and in the front of the church, you have a wonderful altar. And that's immediately gold gilded, it's absolutely gorgeous. And you look at it and go, oh! But your eyes don't stop there. Oftentimes around that, you'll have statues that are pointing like this. Okay? And they're pointing over there, and next to the altar is where the priest sits. And it's a little higher. You know that they have a column and they have a little place, a little bird's nest? Okay? I don't know what they do up there, but they're up there. So you're caught by that, and then all of a sudden, just off to the left of that, you'll see some more artwork. And it'll be cherubs kind of pointing this way, and you're like, wonder what they're pointing at. And you start following, and you'll go across and you go, oh, there's the pews. I mean, for the singers. And so the singers and the choir will be up there, and then you're looking back, and all of a sudden they have this stairway that goes diagonally up, and then before you know it, you're looking up more at the second layer of art that's up here. And then that art points up higher, and you'll see that people actually walk into a church and they screw themselves to heaven. They actually start spinning like this, and almost everybody goes the same direction. You don't really see people going this way because it doesn't have to flow. Subconsciously, they have set this up so that you are tricked to start feeling like you're going to heaven, that you're kind of like in air, like you're flying. So Caravaggio also figured out that putting the figures in such a way that points them out, and then picking up landscapes that brought things in, because you can't have the viewer go out this way. You've got to find something that brings the viewer in here. So oftentimes what we will do is we'll take the corner of fabric, and you can see what I have going on here, and that will be the thing that will bring us back down. Okay? So here we have the vase. Here we have the dogwood, the flowers. They're placed in such a way that over every one of these golden mean sections, we have one of the flowers. We have this really cool subliminal branch that bends this way, points this way, and then we have the fabric that brings us back down, a hard edge, and starts the whole thing again. Okay? Eye magnets in landscapes, crucial. In fact, I dare you to go into paintings that were into a museum where they've done paintings from the 1800s, and I dare you to find paintings where you can't find where artists purposely caused the viewer. You'll have trees that go this way, and you'll have trees that bend this way. You'll actually see that they cup each other. They understood. Now, old artists, when they put a painting together, they composed it. They did the golden mean. They did a composition that had eye magnets that would draw the viewer to the main subject matter. Ultimately, you want the viewer to be caught up to go here. Now, in my early days, when I didn't know what the golden mean was, let's just kind of go over this real quick. I would do landscapes like this, and I'd say, where's my main focal point? Remember, the main focal point has to be an effect, not a thing. But in this case, we have a vase, that's this here, and then we have the rest of the vase here. And then the main central focal point would be the light here on the vase. That would be my main focal point, is the effect of light on the vase, not the vase itself. And then from here, I would actually draw this. Now, I do this in my landscape painting. So I do a painting of Yellowstone Falls, and I'll have a waterfall, and I have my center focal point on the water. It's not the waterfall itself, it's the light on the waterfall that I'm trying to illustrate. And then I'll do a spin like this. I will also then, too, is kind of manipulate the world so that I have perspective like this. And where I got this idea from is that I remember growing up as a young kid, we'd go down to the Haight-Ashbury when the hippies were out there. And you'd go to all of those poster shops. And you would look at these posters, and once you got your eyes involved with them, you couldn't, they literally kept you. No matter where you were in the store, you'd look over and you'd immediately feel this swirl. And I thought, if you could accomplish that in painting, how awesome that would be. So you could see that we have the viewer totally trapped. If every line is pointing to my central focal point here, and if every line relates to itself that way, then I would trap my viewer. I learned once I did my golden mean that I could put all of these intersections on golden means. And where these intersections would fall, I'd have perfectly proportioned spots in my painting where I'd put my objects. And remember, when we're doing a painting, you have one main focal point. One main focal point. That's it, one. But then you have two subfocal points. And this would be one main focal point. We would put another focal point here, and then another focal point here. These two are not going to be as bright as this one here. Okay? That focal point there has to be the brightest. But what I'm trying to do is create a triangle. And you'll see this in old masters' paintings. Not only do they have this pattern that they have creating a composition, but they have also other spots in the painting that catch your eye. And the reason for that is they understood that the mind gets bored very fast. If you have just one focal point, the mind gets bored. And so when you're having a conversation with somebody, you make eye contact with them. That's the main focal point. That's the connection that you have. In fact, it's kind of odd if you're not looking at their eyes and talking to them. Of course, women always go, my eyes are up here. But they also know that you can't have a conversation staring at somebody without all of a sudden your brain checking somewhere else. And so the brain will kind of go, okay, but they'll look at a piece of paper in the corner, or they'll, so your eyes catch. So it's very common for us to look at something, and then still our brain wanders to look at something else. So when you have these other two little focal points that are not as bright, not as eye-catching, but catches the viewer enough, the eyes wander. Okay? When the eyes wander, it is our job to bring the viewer back to the main focal point. Just like with a conversation, you can't sit and wander for a while without the person feeling like they're being ignored. So you have to bring the conversation back to the main focal point. Okay? So here's our stage. Here's our secondary focal point. It gives us something interesting. We're going to put this on a golden mean out here somewhere. And then a composition is best done with light. And it's the introduction of light that makes art. Without it, no sense messing with it. And so we're going to have the light come from the left-hand side, because that's the way we read. And I also want you to notice too, that if you have the light coming from the left, you want the object on the opposite side. Now if we would flip it the other direction, and you choose to have light coming from this side, you don't want to have the object close to the light. That creates a really small pattern. By highlighting the side closest to you, the furthest part to you, by bringing the highlight here so that the light travels across and hits here, it creates part of the eye movement. So you want to have the object that you're highlighting opposite the direction of the light for a good composition. And then the key to finding out an interesting painting is all in how moving the light around till something happens. And that's probably the thing people miss the most. They start painting too quickly. And so what you're looking for is shadows, highlights, something that becomes more interesting than the objects themselves. And you move this around and you spend time messing with it. Now, you don't want to ever have the subject matter lit from the front. Just like you never paint a painting that is painted from a photograph that flash has gone off, because there's no shadows. What makes a great painting is 90% shadows, 10% light. By bringing light from the front, you're eliminating all your shadows. You always want the light to come from the left or the right, or dynamically from the back, which causes a lot of shadow in the front. But remember, painting is about light, not about things. So our homework assignment was to paint a teacup. But in essence, I don't really care about you painting teacups. What I wanted to do is to see what you were going to do that was going to make that teacup special. So, when we eliminate the light, that becomes interesting. And notice, I'm taking all of my interest away from the pot itself, and I'm concentrating on the light. How the light's going to hit the pot, how this is lit up, how this is lit up. Even our secondary focal point here. This is our main focal point out there, and it just depends on where you're looking. But this catches our eye, and then you've got this line that leads us back in. And with a little bit of twisting and molding, I could put these in right where I'd want them to really cause that. But that's an interesting subject matter now, as opposed to just sitting there. Any questions? So, let's see what you guys have been up to.
Say, Steph, you only lit up the toes, you didn't light up the flowers at all.
No, the flowers are just eye magnets.
Okay.
So I lit up the vase in the front of the toad. The flowers weren't part of the painting, and that's the problem with most artists, is that they end up making everything important. And the flowers are just there to create eye magnets, okay? So, but if I wanted to, I could, if I really wanted to get the dogwood, part of it would be, where the dogwood lay and how I would manipulate the branches, and then I could bring the light onto the dogwood, if it was really about that. It's all artist's choice. It's all about what you choose to do. So if the painting really had to rely on the dogwood, and you can see this right now, let me go and turn this off. I feel like a dentist going out taking an x-ray. Okay, so here we have the dogwood lit. And if the dogwood were my central focal point, I would take the light onto the dogwood and I would eliminate the light off of this. It's all artist's choice, whatever you choose. This thing kind of comes in. I like the idea of having just a little bit of that light on there so we can see it. But see, look at all the shadow. But look at how dramatic that is. Imagine if you would go on stage or go see a play and everything was just bright like this, okay? People who design lights for plays oftentimes get paid more than the actors, because you can have the best performance, and if it's not lit up right, if it's not staged correctly, the viewer is not going to be engaged. So somebody comes in and goes, okay, we need a blue light on here and then a spotlight on the fat woman. Okay? The fat woman's the star of the show. Nobody argue with her. She's the prima donna. And then the choir is in the dark. They're lit up enough, but never as much as the star performer. And the star performer could be whatever. I mean, I can easily change this whole painting to be about the frog. But that wouldn't really work because he's on the wrong side. You see, the frog is now here, and now the light story is really short. The light comes in, and then it doesn't do anything. It'd be better if the frog were on the other side if I wanted to make him the center focal point, because you want to have the longest line of light to travel in the painting. Why? It creates more energy. That light coming in starts the flow of energy. Objects out here catch our interest to come back out, but it's up to the artist to pull the artist back in. You can only have one central focal point in a painting. You choose that, you determine that. Okay? Any questions? Good.